Today we are shouting about shared ownership. For more and more people, shared ownership is becoming one of the most accessible ways to own a home. So could it help you own a home? Just as it's evolving to allow even more people to use it as a way of getting onto the property ladder, it's picked up a few naysayers too. So we'll be addressing different aspects about shared ownership in today's market and hopefully helping you understand why we believe in it so much as a solution to affording your next home. So I want to introduce Hannah Harding, who works for Platform Home Ownership, but more importantly, actually owns a home through shared ownership, don't you, Hannah?
Yes.
So tell us about that.
So I have a 2-bedroom house in Worcester. I've had it for nearly 4 years, it'll be 4 years in December. And the rent every month is under £300. So in total I pay it's less than £600 altogether. Mm-hmm. So it was more doable than, buying a house outright was not doable at all.
Yeah. So you found that option with this. Makes sense. So we're going to explore a few more of the things around shared ownership. And this series kind of works in 3 ways because in the other 2 episodes, we talked about the stigmas around shared ownership. We talked about explaining it as a way of owning a home. And in this episode, we're exploring the opportunities. So also with us today is Sarah Williams. Hi, Sarah.
Hello.
So just tell us a bit about how shared ownership worked for you.
So I'm no longer a shared owner, but I started out as a shared owner. I bought a 2-bed apartment. It was our first home together. I had it for around 4 or 5 years, and it enabled us to get to where we are now, which is we now own a 3-bedroom house, which we purchased on the open market. It was ideal for us at the time. We were there a few years. It was brand new. It was low maintenance, low cost. And when we came to sell, the equity that we'd built up and also the fact that the apartment had gone up in value meant that we could then use that to put down the deposit on a larger house, which suited our needs at the time. So it was great for me.
Good example of how it can work, isn't it, Hannah?
Yeah, definitely.
What about the experience then of signing up or even knowing about shared ownership? Because am I right in thinking that when you got it, you weren't actually a member of staff?
Yeah, I wasn't. So at the time, my boyfriend at the time and I were both living at home with parents, just finished uni, had very little of an urge to move out. We were just happy. You get comfortable, don't you? And it was actually my mum who'd seen the properties advertised. And at the time, this was over 10 years ago, shared ownership wasn't really a massive thing. We didn't know much about it. And she came home from work with this leaflet and showed it to me. And I just thought it sounded ideal, really. I think I'd always envisioned my first home to be renting, because in my head, that was all I'd afford.
Okay.
It was an easy process, really. Once we had that information, we inquired through the housing association. They had a dedicated sales team and a sales consultant that started the process and guided us through it from start to finish. And as first-time buyers, it was just what we needed, really. We were pretty much clueless, to be honest, and they just helped us through every step of the way.
That's interesting that you were thinking, not necessarily, oh my God, I don't know how I'm going to afford my first home, but your first thought was that, we're just going to have to rent and we're never going to be able to. So
never even occurred to me that we'd buy as our first home. Never occurred to me, to be honest.
So what do you remember most? What did you love most about that place?
I still love it now to this day, even though we've got our 3-bed house in our garden. I love the apartment. It was the fact that it was brand new, the warranty. I mean, we were only in our early 20s at the time. It was just peace of mind that we had the warranty. It was low cost in terms of not just the rent and the mortgage, but also the bills as well. It was really economical. It just suited us perfectly, to be honest. It was great, really good.
Hannah, in the other episode about explaining it, we talked about the process of reselling and all that kind of stuff, and actually it's not really that dissimilar to doing it normally.
Yeah, not really.
Yeah.
I mean, because I bought my house as a resale, but then Sarah sold her flat to somebody else. So I suppose she did kind of the opposite of what I did.
Yeah.
How was that process, considering you were in a shared ownership home compared to maybe, normal?
It was fine. It was really good. I mean, we had an upstairs apartment, so I had reservations as to what the demand would be and things like that for something that wasn't level access and that kind of thing. But we put it on the market tentatively through an estate agent. Again, I was advised how to do it and how to obtain the valuation and all that sort of thing. Put it on the market thinking, we'll just see how it goes. And I think we had an offer accepted within a couple of weeks. So yeah, it was brilliant. It was really easy. It wasn't, like Hannah said, it wasn't, to be honest, much different from selling a property that's owned outright.
And that same sort of process, really, as if you buy a house fully outright, you earn a bit more on it, a bit more comes in it, and that helps you with the next stage.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Sarah, thank you.
It's okay.
Glad your story was a great one. It's good to hear from you. Thank you.
No worries.
So let's welcome Alex Brodie. Now, Alex, just tell us a little about your story and where you're at with your shared ownership.
Okay, so me and my partner bought our shared ownership when I was the only one working, so it was only one income in the household. We were staying with my mother and father-in-law, and it was just starting to get a bit of stepping on toes, and so we looked around, and to be honest, shared ownership, we were quite naive at the time, where we looked at it and went, I don't want to be living with someone, because that's honestly the thought that we had.
That is something that we still get that question. Like, it's something we've actually put in our FAQ sheet, because people do say that a lot. They're like, well, who am I going to be living with?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's a really common thing. You say that it's like a naive thing to think, but so many people think that. It's a very common question.
Well, we actually passed over on Rightmove our property about 3 or 4 times before we went, do you know what, let's have a look. And it's just changed our lives. We've managed to get out and go through. We've got a 2-bedroom house in Worcester. We're now both working, so we've been able to afford to look into staircasing and basically making it our own, rather than this property where we own a house, but everyone's but you're part buy, aren't you? And it's like, now we can say we're actually 100%. So
that's interesting about that sort of first looking over it, because I think that might be something that a lot of people still do, isn't it? They just completely ignore it without really looking into the details. So what would you say to them? I'd
definitely say, like, it is, if you're young, like we were 20 when we looked into it, go for it, have a look, ask the question. It doesn't hurt to click on it, ask the question, phone up and talk to someone, because it does mean that, like, at the time I was earning quite decent money, but you can't get a property for the mortgages that are offered. With the shared ownership, it's that step to go, well, I'm now no longer living with mum and dad. I'm proving that I can pay a mortgage and rent, and I'm building equity on a property where in 10 years' time, if I stay there, I'm making money. So yeah, it's always worth it.
And what about the experience of, someone who came into it not knowing that much about it? What about that experience of signing up for it, going through that process, and how did that all feel?
So I actually started, because it is a platform house. So we had, I think it was a woman called Vanessa, come down from Birmingham, and we set up in the library. She had all the sheets and talked us through everything, did the affordability calculator, and she was really helpful, and really, like, she was on the phone constantly if you needed that, any questions to be asked. And it was so straightforward, really, when you look at it. It was just getting the initial mortgage, like, checked off. That was, because, like I say, at the time, 20 years old, one
person earning.
It was a bit of a deal, but it's just definitely made such a difference.
Now, Alex mentions the staircasing process there as well. So that's something we talked about in the Explain It episode, but just kind of refresh quickly what that means.
So staircasing is buying more shares, simply put. So basically people can do it at any time. As long as they can afford to do it, they can do it. We don't actually do another affordability check. So you don't have to go through, like, the rigmarole that you do initially. So it's probably a bit simpler. I don't know if you think that, having done it.
So having we completed yesterday, and going through, all you need is to get that mortgage offered. So because we already had an open mortgage, So we 3-year fixed every time because we had that there. The only thing different is we had to contact our bank that we were with and get a further advance.
Yeah.
So you can't get the traditional mortgage. But as far as everything else goes, it was just getting in touch with platform, getting the solicitors like actioned, and going forward from there.
Doesn't sound much different to doing it.
Yeah, because you have to have a solicitor because you're buying more shares, and like there's changes to, there's like a little sort of, I suppose, attached little document in the lease that has to be signed off and things. So you do have to have a solicitor, but it's not, like I used to deal with the staircasing from our side, like that was my job when I first started. But it's not that difficult, and it's another thing that I think people think is going to be really hard, and it's not. Your rent just gets reduced for whatever you buy up to, or in Alex's case it goes down to 0.
Yeah.
And it is simple.
Is there any difference if you do or don't work for platform in how it works?
Not really. We have loads of colleagues contact us and say like, what properties you've got, how does it work? And we do exactly the same as we would with a customer. We add them to the mailing list, they'll get the email. If they then apply and are sort of successful, like when I applied for my house, because I worked in the sales team as well at the time, so a colleague that I worked directly with looked at all my bank statements, my pay slips and everything, which I was comfortable with. That was absolutely fine, but she was very conscious of saying to me, is that okay? And I was absolutely happy for her to do that. Then I had to be signed off by a manager, and as a sales team we have to fill in a form which I think it gets signed off by a director. Just, it's more due diligence our end than the applicant's end to say that we have treated that person in the same way that we would any other customer. We've not given them special treatment, we've not sort of favoured them over another applicant. But then now the process has changed slightly, and we don't do the affordability checks in-house, so we are no longer looking at somebody's bank statements and pay slips and things. That goes to an external mortgage broker. So I don't know, some people might find that uncomfortable if we were looking at, which I can totally understand, if we were looking at their details, but we don't do that anymore. So we'll see your mortgage in principle, and we see the Help to Buy application, which does have your income on it, but we don't look at the documents anymore. So it's kind of, it's a little bit more private, I suppose, internally than it was, but it's no different to any other applicant who doesn't work with us.
And as a process, Alex, now that you're at that stage of owning 100%, has it felt smooth? Has it felt tricky? Has it felt complicated?
I think with everything, there's always bumps in the road. To start with, we struggled to get contacts with the solicitors because obviously platform. So I'll be honest, I approached someone in platform and said, look, how does it work? And they said, look, get a solicitor, get them to email us, we'll action a solicitor. And that initial start, once solicitors were actioned, that took about 2, maybe 3 months. But once solicitors were actioned, we were over and done with within a month.
And anyone who's gone through any house transaction of whatever tenure will tell you that's generally the way.
I think with the staircasing thing, the beauty of it is you are not moving, you are not trying to negotiate to people, whereas it's literally, I want to buy 100%, thank you very much, sign the documents, there you go, job done. Whereas you're not trying to negotiate dates and moving people out and stuff like that. So I think that's where it comes smoother. And I think the wording of it for anyone going in, it is daunting because it is, we could have done it 2 years ago if we'd have known, but we didn't know because it's when you sign up, the first thing people say is, oh, if you're going to staircase, you have to staircase by at least 10 or 20% because you've got the solicitor's fees to pay for. So that is the recommendation. You have to go by at least that much. So being at 35%, we were like, oh God, we're going to have to, we looked at it to staircase, and I think initially we were looking at going to 80%, but then they said, well, just go for the lot. Oh, brilliant, yeah. So
That's kind of what, that's the dream, isn't it? Really?
Yeah,
That's the,
because I mean, we've. I know personally, I always say to people, like, 10% is kind of sensible to do as a minimum because you're paying your fees, and the difference in your rent and your mortgage, sometimes the fees kind of outweigh the benefit. So at the end of the day, it's up to that person if they want to do. Staircasing is very open, and that person can do basically what they like when they like. There's people don't have to come to us and say, can I? It's just, I want to. And we go, okay, great, because we want people to staircase. But it's just when people have had a chat with us, like, we'll say to customers, this is the things you've got to think about, because it's just being aware of the fact that if you've got to spend, I don't know, £1,000 or so on all your fees and whatnot, because you have to pay for evaluation, you have to pay your solicitor fees, potentially admin fees at your mortgage lender, like there's a few different costs. So sometimes if you staircase a very small amount, and again, it depends on your value of your house and all that sort of stuff, but if you only staircase a little bit, sometimes you end up paying more in fees than, whereas if you just wait a little bit longer, you're still paying the same fees, but you might benefit a little bit more.
We've, like, all the solicitors' fees, because we had, I think it was pretty much 200 for platform to action, then our solicitors, then the mortgage, and it's the beauty of it now is, like, we pay platform £10 for ground servicing, and that's it. Like, we have the buildings insurance, we have, like, everything is down to us now, which is as a homeowner now, is empowering. It's just brilliant that at the age of 26, with this shared ownership, I could never have thought of doing this without it.
Great, yeah. Alex, thank you for sharing your experiences as well. Hannah, thank you for your knowledge as always.
No problem.
Remember, we've produced other episodes in this series, so there's also one talking about shared ownership as a whole, where we explain it. So if there's anything you heard here you're not sure about, have a listen to that episode. And also, because people talk about staircasing and I reckon there's charges and it's a scam and all that kind of stuff, don't worry, we've covered that in the episode about stigmas as well. If you want to know more about shared ownership, then just go and search platform home ownership. Guys, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.